Happy Wedding Tip Wednesday. Today I'm going to talk about wedding cakes and dessert ideas and options for your big day. When thinking about having a wedding cake, the biggest thing that you need to know is an approximate number of guests, but also do you want to have the cake as your main dessert item? So when finding a wedding cake supplier, they will ask you what size cake you need or how many people you are intending to feed with said cake. They will help you determine how big of a cake you need. A lot of couples don't choose to have cake for absolutely every guest. Some people choose to make enough available for, say, 80 to 90% of their guests, as not everyone has necessarily got a sweet tooth. But when you are talking with your cake supplier, think about where it's going to be stored. Is there a fridge available to store it before it needs to come out? Buttercream and creams don't go well in heat, extreme heat. Obviously, the cake makers will have certain restrictions and guidelines that they make as a recommendation for you, but there's something that you need to think about as well. You don't always have to have a cake if you don't want to. There's alternative options. You could do cheese, big wheels of cheese to make a big tiered cake. You can do a croquembouche, you can do cupcakes, donuts, cookies. There's so many different things you can do. You could also do smaller cakes for every single table, so every person on the table has a cake. But also, you don't have to have a cake, as I've mentioned, but if you do have a cake, think about when you're cutting it. Are you cutting it in your reception and potentially then leading into your first dance? Or do you want to cut it after your ceremony and have that as a cake and bubbles or drinks after the ceremony for a bit of a celebration with your guests? There's so many different alternatives available, but one thing to also consider is if you're doing a dry hire and potentially not having a full caterer for your function, who's cutting and serving the cake? Other options, if you want to do a smaller cake for the cutting, if you're more budget conscious, you could get a slab cake to then have to serve for guests as well. That's another cost-effective way to do it. But have a think about, A, do you want a cake? B, do you want it to feed everybody? Obviously, C, what flavors, because that is very important. But there are plenty of other options, macaroons, cannoli, big giant pavlova. You could also decorate that together as a couple before you have it served for your guests. Candy bars. A lot of people choose to have the candy bars in addition to their cake. That's also an option as well. But just all things to think about. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll be back soon with more wedding tips for your Wednesdays. Okay, bye.